know from the Kremlin that President Putin is considering being on the group. He's on the invite list. According to the draft charter, President Trump is set to be chairman for life and can hire and bring in, or essentially fire, it sounds like Apprentice, who he wants as well. Now, it is a carefully crafted response we've seen to the RSVP from Giorgia Meloni today, and also Friedrich Merz, the Chancellor, saying that there is positives within this. I want to bring in Nomi Bar Yaacov in London, international lawyer, mediator, international negotiator for the Geneva Centre of Security Policy. Great to have you back on with us, Nomi. We're going to get to the sticking points in a moment. Given what I just mentioned about Friedrich Merz and Giorgia Meloni, what are the positives, if you see it, of the Board of Peace?
I'm afraid, Gavin, I don't see many positives. I mean, it's very good to be with you again. And as you know, I'm usually cautiously optimistic and highlight the positives. But this is an attempt. This was a board that was endorsed as part of a plan to get to peace and to implement the ceasefire in Gaza. There's no mention of Gaza in this plan. There is no mention of which conflicts they're going to deal with. It's very clear that it's an attempt to replace existing international institutions like the UN. They're willing to potentially cooperate with the UN. I mean, you need to pay $1 million if you would like to stay on the board beyond 3 years. That's not, acceptable. President Trump, as chairman, holds all the power, and by all I mean 100% of the power. He can decide to veto decisions or not bring them to a vote. He can decide to kick members out, and he can decide how to move ahead. I don't see this moving. I don't see them getting beyond the disarmament. The first stage in, I think all this is fantasy. It's just not a realistic plan. And of course, they didn't consult with the Palestinians. So I find it very, very hard to see positives in this particular board.
Are there enough, or are there any good actors that you see in that list on the board that you think genuinely want to succeed in this first Leviathan task of rebuilding Gaza?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think that the Gulf states, one needs to look at the way in which they entered, and the two Muslim states, Turkey and Pakistan. Just at the sort of, 11th hour, the Saudis, the Qataris, the United Arab Emirates, Jordan, Egypt, Pakistan and Turkey issued a joint statement stating that they will join more or less on condition that, but I mean, they don't quite say that, but they say we will join for the purpose of ensuring that phase 2 of the ceasefire is implemented and for the purpose of securing the end goal as a Palestinian state. But you don't see that anywhere in the charter, and you don't see that as President Trump's goal. And so, yes, I think there's some states there with very, very good intentions. And I think I mentioned those states. I think certainly Egypt and Jordan have a vested interest beyond the fact that they think they are genuinely interested in peace and stability. They also then, they neighbor with, Jordan neighbors with the West Bank and Egypt with Gaza. So they have a very serious stake in it. And Egypt and Qatar have been mediating since the 7th of October, painstakingly to try to get the ceasefire above board. But I mean, as I said, there is a Security Council resolution that endorses this peace for a different purpose. So we need to be very clear-eyed about what the Security Council endorsed and what is actually happening on the ground. And you can also see that none of these states sent the heads of states or heads of governments. They all sent a second sort of tier below them.
There were notably few world leaders, weren't there?
There were 16. I mean, 16 over 60 invited. So I think you need to do the maths, Gavin. It's and the audience. I mean, it's and I think states are scared and they're joining reluctantly. I mean, for example, Mark Carney gave of Canada made a very, very, very brave, courageous, forward-thinking speech. And then today, President Trump on Truth Social wrote that he's going to renege on his own invitation to him to join, and that he cannot join. And he had some very, very painful, nasty words to say about him, only because he spoke his truth.
Which takes us back to the peacemaker in chief and the president for life. And I mentioned at the top, the Apprentice style. You're with us, you're without us, you're disinvited. Now you're essentially fired from this. But it's not interesting. You touched upon it a moment ago. Right now, maybe we have to read the diplomatic speak in, Nomi, but it's not a no from European leaders, Merks and Maloney. It's just a not now in its current form. And I wonder whether you think there's a suggestion we could still see a morphing of the board still, or if this is a polite way out for Germany and Italy.
No, I think you may see certain states joining because, Trump is transactional and the board is transactional. And, he's transactional and he can be vicious. So the question really is, what is he going to do about those who are not going or haven't decided and are kind of, hanging in the balance? Look, for example, at President Emmanuel Macron. You were based in Paris. When he said very clearly that he was not going to join, then President Trump, mocked him and he said, oh, he'll come and say, Donald, that's mocking. And then he said he's going to impose tariffs on French wine and French champagne, 200%. So, states are concerned about, they're not necessarily, they're going to think twice about what the consequences are. I don't know what the consequences are going to be for Canada, but I do think that the world has to stand with Canada, because I think there is an awful lot at stake here. This board is trying to create a new world disorder, a new world in which the power lies with the rich, powerful real estate moguls, and able to threaten other states. And I think it's not going to be an equal world. It's not going to be a world in which there is going to be peace. But on the positives, just because you did ask me, there is a whole structure underneath the board, and there's some excellent people there, and we didn't touch upon it. And I don't know whether you would like to get into that, yes. But there's an excellent high representative, like we had a high representative for Bosnia, Carl Bildt. Now we have a high representative for Gaza, Nikolai Mladenov. He's a former foreign minister of Bulgaria. He's a former UN special envoy to the Middle East peace process. He was the head of UNSCO, that's the United Nations Special Representative Office for this purpose. And he knows the area, and he's a very serious person. And he's now, he's coming from the Gulf. He's spent the last few years as head of the Diplomatic Academy in the UAE. So he has contacts across the board, and he also knows Gaza because he dealt with Gaza while he was special representatives. And there are some good people. The problem with the structure is that it's very cumbersome. There is a Palestinian technocratic government that so far hasn't been allowed to go by Israel to get into Gaza, which is absurd. There is a Palestinian police force being trained by Egypt and Jordan. There is a civil military coordination center that the Americans built up, and many countries, including France, and representatives, and that's falling apart because the US is running it unilaterally, more like a dictatorship than a coordination center. So there is going to be an international stabilization force. It was meant to be on the ground a long time ago. President Trump has appointed a US major general to head it. Surprise, surprise. But the US are not going to have boots on the ground. So who do you think is going to have boots on the ground? Who is going to be willing to get into the crossfire between Israel and Hamas? So lots and lots of questions there. But again, the key issue for me is disarmament, because President Trump said that more than 3 days ago that if within 2 to 3 days, Hamas won't give an answer that they are going to disarm, and surely they're not going to give an answer that they will disarm, because their raison d'être is to be an armed resistance until they have guarantees that there'll be a Palestinian state. I don't see that happening. So I think there is an awful lot. There is a big mess underneath in the structure underneath the Board of Peace. I didn't even mention the executive committee, but that's made of property moguls. So that's, there is, it's not so clear who is going to do, how the coordination is going to work. So am I optimistic? I'm afraid not so optimistic.
But the proof of the pudding is going to be in the eating, isn't it, as well, Nomi, that given the biggest challenge, like you say, the disarmament of Hamas, if that job is done, and who does it, huge question marks over that, you would imagine there may be a snowball effect. One effect, which I'd like to get a thought on you, is about the effect to the UN. Let's first have a listen to what President Trump said when it came to whether it was going to be seen as a rival or not to the United Nations.
Combination of the Board of Peace with the kind of people we have here, coupled with the United Nations, can be something very, very unique for the world. It's for the world. This isn't United States. This is for the world.
Nomi Bar Yaacov yesterday, the former UN Deputy Secretary General, said, quote, "We're coming out of a period of extremely weak UN leadership, and I think this could be a call to action." He said, maybe this is an unintended good consequence. What do you think?
Well, I think it's true that the UN has been weak and weakened because of the structure of the UN and principally because of the Security Council with different states exercising veto powers. But here you have the veto power by the US. So I beg to differ because I think that the question really is how is he going to run this particular board? And it doesn't look like he's running it in a democratic fashion. It doesn't. You've got a number of dictators there, including Alexander Lukashenko, including Viktor Orban. You've got a number of indicted war criminals. You got indictment for war criminals by the International Criminal Court for Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, and for Vladimir Putin, who hasn't decided if he's joining. But the mere fact that Putin was invited is suggestive that peace isn't necessarily the goal. So I think it's tricky. I think we can give it the benefit of the doubt and see how to work with it, which is why Merz and Meloni and others haven't quite decided what they're going to do. I also think the Gulf countries are very much going to sit and observe what is happening. But again, I stress, how on earth are you going to disarm Hamas? Israel still occupies 58% of the Gaza Strip and is chipping more and more. Originally, it occupied the so-called yellow line was the line to which Israel had to withdraw to at the end of phase one, was at 53%. There are killings every day. I mean, the tasks are vast. And if you look at the maps that you showed earlier in the slides, these are not maps that were made in consultation with Palestinians, and especially not Palestinians from Gaza. They leave access routes, for the Israeli army. They are boxing initially the population in Rafah, close to the Egyptian border. That's the stage one. That's where they said they have started to build. Are they going to let them out of Rafah?
It's a very good point. And also just the actual background, the slogan itself, some reports that the map on the board of peace have been made with AI slop. We're yet to verify that. For now, Nomi, we will speak anon.
Absolutely.
Great to have you on the programme as always. Nomi Bar Yaacov in London, international lawyer, negotiator and mediator.